Shopping for dress shirts can be a pain. A lot of them are made of stiff, uncomfortable material that gets a little bit too hot when you're trying to move around. The ones that are made out of athletic material are often too casual and don't feel right for a special occasion. It's a pain to find the right dress shirt, and that's why I'm so glad that I found Mays and Nate. Mays and Nate are the inventors of the performance fabric dress shirt. Their high-performance dress shirts are warm in winter and cool in summer. Think of them as your secret weapon for any occasion. I'm confident if you give Mays and Nate a try, you'll never go back to conventional men's clothing again. Possibly the best part of these dress shirts is that they're machine washable, which means no more expensive trips to the dry cleaner. I've worn my Mays and Nate shirts at a couple weddings over the last couple months. I'm always glad that I pull one out of the closet. So if you want the best damn dress shirts money can buy, check out Mays and Nate. Right now, if you go to maysandnate.com and use our promo code MAYS, you'll receive $35 off any regular priced order of $125 or more. That's $35 off when you go to MIZZENANDMAIN.com and use our promo code MAYS. Do you ever wish that before every NFL game, you could get up-to-date and accurate information before placing bets or locking in your fantasy lineup? Well, now you can with the Elias Game Plan app, the ultimate sports betting and fantasy companion for the NFL. Whether you're a part of a fantasy tournament, placing bets, or just a huge sports fan, Elias Game Plan has everything you need. Elias Game Plan is a sports app from the most trusted name in sports stats, the Elias Sports Bureau. The app is really well done, and it's presented in a way where every single game has 4 or 5 little insights, whether it's a trend statistically, how a team has covered the spread, what rushing stats look like against a certain team. Really digestible nuggets that are presented in a clear and concise way. So take this NFL season to the next level and download the Elias Game Plan app today. Choose from 3 game plans when you subscribe, weekly, monthly, or annual. But I can get you $25 off your first month when you choose the monthly subscription. So just use my promo code MAYS25. Find Elias Game Plan Sports Betting in the App Store or Play Store and use our promo code MAYS25.
This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. I got a new desk for my office.
You look great.
I appreciate it. I actually I'm so used to just being, head and shoulders up on frame for our show. And so now I'm like, oh God, now all you guys get to see me wear the same sweatshirt every other day. So no, that's, what's really nice about this desk. It's got like a glass top. So I get it's like a whiteboard on my desk. So that's actually been really fun because I go through so many post-it notes where I handwrite my notes. So I'm pretty excited. This is what happens when you turn 30. I'm well above my 30s, but this is what happens. This is what I get excited about. I get excited about having a charger on my desk right now. This is growth for me as an adult.
I'm so happy for you. We're really making strides in the world. We're getting into our Week 8 preview today. What a strange slate of games. We'll get into some others that we think are particularly interesting. Bills offense against Packers defense is a cool matchup. Feel like the Niners could be staring at the ghost of Christmas future a little bit as they look at where the Rams are post Christian McCaffrey trade. Going to talk about the Titans, which we don't often do on this show, not nearly enough. Really appreciate some little things about the Titans, fourth screen conversations, all of that. Before we dig into any of that, though, I wanted to start with what we're calling the game of the week because it is the only game on the NFL schedule this week between 2 teams that currently have winning records. And that is the matchup between the Giants and the Seattle Seahawks.
The exact matchup we thought. That's exactly what the default, the 2 sweetest words in the English language. That's what this game is right here.
I wonder if you look back before the season, probably easily could have done this before we started. Some preseason power rankings. I bet there were a couple lists where the Giants and the Seahawks were 31st and 32nd on those lists.
I would agree with that. Probably, or at least the bottom 4.
In the bottom 4. Yes.
Yeah. In any way,
Them, the Bears, the Texans. Those 4 teams were probably at the bottom of virtually every single ranking you possibly could have come up with before the season. And now both of these teams have winning records 7 games into the year.
Because you got to love it. You got to love how the NFL goes. I was a little bullish on the Seahawks because I was like, hey,
So was I.
yeah, but not like this, not like
No.
this at all. And even with the Giants, it's like, oh yeah, this will be a fun rebuilding year for them. Not that they like looking at the draft orders, which is just so much fun to look at week in, week out. And I think they're 30th right now, just as the season ended, which is just the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like this team, I thought was like, oh yeah, they'll have another top 10 pick they can build with, but nope, there they are. Only one loss so far for the Giants. So, yeah, not exactly how we're expecting this NFL season to go. When looking at the Sunday night game as well, the Packers-Bills game, it's like that's what the NFL was like, oh, that's going to be our bona fide game. And it's
10-point underdog.
We're 10.5-point underdog, which is insane. It's
that game of the week is a double. The Packers are double-digit dogs. So we have talked a lot about
with a healthy Aaron Rodgers.
yeah, exactly. We've talked about a lot of the curiosities, I guess, surrounding these two teams. We've talked a lot about Geno. We talked a lot about the Giants offense, some of the unique stuff that they do. Yeah. I wanted, instead of digging into the nitty gritty of this game, we'll get to some of it. I wanted to take a step back and with all of that in mind that we just said, talk about what we're supposed to do with the Giants and the Seahawks. And honestly, what they're supposed to do with themselves. When you're in this situation that both teams are in, where you're not abiding by the timeline that most people thought you would be on coming into the season, what happens next? And I think that's most interesting with the Giants, because the Giants were supposed to be this team that was in full-scale rebuild mode. Pretty sure they were 30th in the NFL in cash spending this season coming into the year. The Falcons and the Bears were the only two teams that were lower than them. They have $44 million in dead cap space right now, or in dead cap that they're carrying just because of the moves that they've had to make, getting rid of Logan Ryan, James Bradbury, Blake Martinez, all of these kind of cost cutting. We're going to take one on the chin things that you expect. We expected them to have a top 5 pick probably next year, be in a situation where Daniel Jones' 5th-year option wasn't picked up. Probably time to go get a quarterback. Here we go. We are rebuilding in the sense of how we understand rebuilding in the NFL. Well, now the Giants are 6-1, and they are very likely going to make the playoffs. So what are we supposed to do with this? Over the next 12 to 18 months, how are the Giants supposed to navigate this space that they're in that no one expected them to be in?
I think it's okay. They have to just be reasonable with themselves and not buy any fool's gold. I also think they just have to identify, okay, what are our building blocks, which is obviously, the Andrew Thomas of the world. Thibodeau, their first round pick, one of their first round picks this year, has looked promising, like especially the last couple of weeks as he's gotten healthier. Evan Neal's been up and down and he got hurt, but they have to identify those building blocks. And I'm saying that because it's kind of easy because there's not a ton. So it's for them, but that's what makes this so surprising. That's why the Seahawks discussion, I feel like, is going to be easier in a second, because this is what it's so much. That's the house money of house money. Them, it's just like, okay, I don't think they shouldn't be talking themselves into what they weren't going to talk themselves into 2 months ago. I mean that more just with the Jones discussion more than anything. Like looking at, yes, Daniel Jones has been fine, but they have maximized everything that they can do with this offense. They have to be reasonable that they've had some bounces go right. Yes, they have maximized what they can do, but that's how the NFL goes. This is a few bounces go your way. That's the difference between 11-6 and 7-9. Sometimes it's just a few bounces going your way. God, I'm so happy I just nailed both of the records right there. No, I said 7-9, 7-10. Dang it. I thought I just nailed it. But I think that's what it is that they just have to make sure that they know it's like, hey, this was not, yes, we were ahead of schedule as far as our record, but we're not ahead of schedule as far as our building blocks. It's not like they identified a couple guys just come on. They're like, oh man, this undrafted guy, we can really build along him. Yes, there are a couple of guys that have stood or outperformed themselves, but I think that's what they have to be reasonable. I think that's what they have to do. It's ride this. You're not going to apologize for any win. Just keep winning. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about losing 8 spots in the draft later. That's such a different argument. Just keep winning, but then be also reasonable about how you won this year.
They're in such a strange place because you just assume they would have been in a top 5 and picking in the top 5 and in range to go get a quarterback. They're probably not in that range anymore. And what's useful for Joe Schoen, who's going to be in charge of navigating this entire scenario, is that he's already done this before.
Right.
His first year in Buffalo, they tore that thing down, or we're in the process of doing it. They did a little bit of everything. We discussed this offseason when we were talking about how teams should rebuild. The Bills, in their first year with McDermott and Bean, they went out and signed Micah Hyde. They went out and signed Jordan Poyer. They didn't totally strip it all down, but they did a decent amount of it. I think they had like $30 million in dead cap the first year that they were there. So now you're in a space where the Giants are trying to figure out all right, what do we do if we make the playoffs and we're staring at some of these decisions? Daniel Jones being the number one decision.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones is a free agent heading into next year. The franchise tag for quarterbacks is $30 million or so, right? That's a pretty big thing that you would have to take on. Tyrod Taylor is under contract for next year. Okay. So the things that you have to weigh with this about Daniel Jones's future are how much of the production we're getting from Daniel Jones right now can we get from Tyrod Taylor at $5 or $6 million? And are we worried? And this is the second thing to me. Are we worried if we move on from Daniel Jones after he's played relatively well and we won a bunch of games, it sends sort of the wrong message? So those are the two things to the locker room. I don't think that's the most important thing, but I do think that's something.
It does matter. It's part of the equation.
I think it's important. It's a part of the equation. So those are the things that you now have to weigh. And then the other part of it is, if you move on from Daniel Jones, what is the plan at quarterback? Because the Bills, you look back on it, I forget this. The Bills made the playoffs the year before they drafted Josh Allen with the 7th overall pick. So what the Bills did, they traded Cordy Glenn to the Bengals. Okay. And they moved from the 21st pick in the draft to the 12th pick in the draft in the first round. They had a second-round pick in pocket after trading Sammy Watkins to the Rams. So they used their 2 second-round picks to move from 12 to 7 to draft Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Guess what the Giants now have
in
their back pocket?
Did they trade for a receiver as well, or trade away a receiver as well? It's like there's so many parallels here.
We'll get to the Kadarius Toney thing in the moment, but after Kadarius Toney's really talented and he's going to the Chiefs. My first thought was, man, now, and especially because we were preparing for this conversation, it's like, ooh, now are the Giants kind of stocking up to see what they have to do at quarterback? So I think these are all of the things that you have to take into account. I wouldn't, and you say this, use the term all the time, I wouldn't be entranced by the siren song of bringing Daniel Jones back for $30 million a year because you won a bunch of games. I understand why that might be appealing, but I would make sure you're seeing the whole chessboard for what this is, because I think that's really important. And I think that Joe Schoen is the type of person, based on his experiences, where that's going to be the way that he sees it.
It's kind of been, I'm going to use the word easy, but easy to talk about what the Giants have been doing, because I kind of trust what they're doing. Like, I trust these coaches. Like, they have enough on their resume there. I'm like, hey, I think these guys are reasonable. Like that. And that's where I'm like, I don't think they're going, you never know with the coaches and GMs, but you never know. You never know. But that's the thing, is like, I feel almost like kind of like they will reasonably do this. If this were a different team, I'd be like, oh my God, they're going to make the worst decision. This is the Timberwolves. This is this team. This is the Raiders. Like, they're going to do something that's going to be like, oh, what are you guys doing? But what also a component of this, and when you're hunting for a quarterback, you're going to be turning over every stone, is I've watched these quarterbacks for the 2023 class. And yes, it's an interesting class. And I think because last year's QB class was such shit that we're now in, there was the Bengals O-line of quarterbacks. And then now we get to an average-ish QB class. And we're like, oh my God, it's such a good class.
There are quarterbacks. There are some functional quarterbacks.
Yes, but there's no bona fide guy. It is, I personally think Bryce Young is the best player, but he is an outlier of all outliers. There's only been one quarterback since the last quarterback under 200 pounds to go in the first round is Jim McMahon. Okay, that's a component of this. Half the teams in the league are going to be out on him just because of size. And then CJ Stroud, the quarterback for Ohio State, is fine. He's not overwhelming. He does a lot of things well. And then Will Levis, the Kentucky quarterback, is interesting, but he's like, put it this way, Will Levis is still a project. He has a lot of tools and he's getting there. He's only 3 months younger than Justin Fields. It's not like you're getting an incomplete quarterback, but those are the top 3 guys at this point in time. So why I'm saying that is it's an eye of the beholder type QB class, just like the Josh Allen draft, where it is feasible for them to move up into the early teens to get one of these guys. So it's not like they're like, oh my God, we have picked, if things keep going how they're going, we're in the mid-20s, we are out on these quarterbacks. No, it's like they're still in striking range. Anybody's in striking range to get one of these quarterbacks. So I think that is what is something that has to be taken into account. And I know that they are going to be turning over every stone to see what quarterbacks are out there. And that's why the Tyrod Taylor contract and being on the roster is something, because then that can lead to the bridge if they get a guy that's more of a project type. So they have options. That's what's kind of nice.
They need to get one.
No, they don't.
I don't even think they need to get one. If you're sitting there and you're looking at this, let's have a frank conversation.
Yeah.
What stuff has Daniel Jones done within the structure of the Giants offense that you don't think Tyrod Taylor can do?
Nothing really. It's the exact. I mean,
it's marginal, probably, right?
Their play styles are so similar. That's the thing, is even if like I know people are going to go, "What are you talking about?" But it's like, no, they are. I mean, Daniel Jones, like scramble rate and running rate, it's like the same as Justin Fields. Like they play like,
and that's what I mean. If you want a guy that has a little bit of mobility in order to give yourself some training wheels as an offense, Tyrod can theoretically give you that. Maybe it won't be the same as Daniel Jones. He's not a battering ram the same way Daniel Jones is.
Right.
But they can build a functional offense next year with Tyrod Taylor.
I love calling Daniel Jones a battering
That's
ram.
what he is.
He is, no, because it's so true, but it's so funny. When he came into the league, that's not who you're expecting to be the battering ram quarterback. I'm sorry. It's just so funny to me.
I'm not trying to shit on Daniel Jones, because I think there's absolutely an argument to be made that Daniel Jones is much better than the player he was over the last few years, because he was in a horrible situation. But if Daniel Jones was under contract for next year and Daniel Jones was on his 5th-year option and making $15 million or whatever it ended up being, say, all right, fine. Like we roll with one more year with Daniel Jones and you see what happens. But they do have to make a decision about this because he is not under contract next year. And so if you're going to franchise him for $30 million, where are you really going? What are you really doing? And I think that's the important part about that. So I just think that if they roll with Tyrod and then you sit there, you have about $70 million in cap space after you move on Kenny Golladay, not if. You have about $70 million in cap space after you do that, right? So do we want to go get a DB? Do we want to go get a number 2 receiver? Do we want to spend our 1st-round pick on another receiver or some other sort of position? You already have your 2 bookend tackles. You have potentially with Nick Gates and Lemieux and some of these younger offensive linemen, the guy that drafted this year, we could piece together the interior for another year. And then in 2024, when you've probably gone, 6-11, in 2023, which I'm sure is going to be hard for fans to watch. But guess what the Bills were in 2017 or in 2018? They were 6-10. It's okay. It doesn't have to be this linear moonshot or this rocket ship that you're watching take off in one certain way. And I think that's why navigating the space can be a little bit complicated.
And you're building the environment and the situation to be better if you do drop in a young quarterback. Like that is the flip side when you don't take a quarterback. And you and I don't know, you've like really convinced me a lot of our discussions, but talking to teams and stuff, that is the flip side when you're like, well, we're not taking a quarterback this year. It's like we're building up such a better situation for when we do take one. Even if they, and yes, you always want them to finally pull the trigger and take a guy. Like that's a discussion about the Colts. But it's like when they do take a guy, it's like, okay, well, now we have 3 reasonable linemen and 1 receiver, like 2 pass catchers, as opposed to 1 lineman, no pass catchers, and you're building like what the Bears have. Like that's kind of the flip side of all this, and like how you can argue or talk yourself into it. And it's a good argument, I think. I've become more of a fan of that argument as I've gone on.
And if you're the Giants, and maybe you can get within striking range for one of these guys by making a couple smaller moves the way that the Bills did, maybe you talk yourself into that plan and that path. That's really hard to do. What the Bills did is really hard to do, to navigate your way. It's like making like 5 fantasy trades.
That's sticking the landing and just nailing it.
Every single way that Josh Allen in that process is an outlier. There's 100 reasons why there is. So I think that this what has become sort of a more traditional path of let's build it up and then let's go find the quarterback later. I think that's totally fine. I understand it's going to be hard to watch that potentially if you're a Giants fan after what has happened this year and after Daniel Jones playing so much better. But I just think you have to understand and look at this and say, they're going to do the most with the players that they have. That is what we've learned here. And this reminds me a little bit of watching the Eagles last year, where this is not the final product, but the intermediate steps are so encouraging. The difference is Jalen Hurts is under contract, so they can just keep rolling with it. Yep. So that's how I would see it. Tyrod Taylor next year is Jalen Hurts in year 2 with the Eagles. The ceiling is definitely different, but I think you just roll with the inertia of what's on your roster because you have a staff in place that can take the most of it. They make the most of it.
you're building up the bones. It's like we want the fancy fixtures and we want all that, but it's like you're building up the bones of your team, and that withstands all the ebbs and flows of an NFL season and franchise building. And so just build up the bones, and then you get the final piece. It's just different. It's just rewiring thinking on that. But I think that Eagles comparison is such a good one. It's like, let's see what we got, and let's have competency at the quarterback position. I know Tyrod is more of a veteran, obviously, but it's like, let's build up this everything around it so we can evaluate what we got too. And now we're not just dropping it like, oh, we got to fix this, fix this. No. What if the Giants, like right now, their expected win loss? Okay, this wasn't as drastic as I thought. Their expected win loss right now is 4-3, just based on points.
Yes, it's all one score games.
Yep. So say if they are 3-4 right now, wouldn't this be such an easier pill to swallow? Like just going like, hey, yeah, move on.
And that's why you should swallow it. And that's why you should swallow it.
That's exactly. You have to understand the bounces you've got.
A couple bounces of the ball shouldn't be the thing that swings this. If you get to the end of the season and you go to Daniel Jones's people at CAA or wherever he is, I think that's where it is. You go in and you say, all right, how about 1 year, 10 million?
Yeah.
Right. And like you come back and you can be the starter.
Prove a deal.
Something reasonable where you feel like it's in the best interest for everyone. You reward him for the way that he played, and you have him be your bridge quarterback going into 2024 when potentially you can find somebody. That's totally fine. But don't get intoxicated by like, oh, we're winning and that we have to build around this. Like that the Bills did such a good job of that. And I think that is why everything that happened with them is instructive here. The Josh Allen thing isn't very far out there possibility that probably is never going to happen again for almost every other team. But there are little signposts and little bits of lessons you can learn from what happened there. And I think that they would behoove them to learn them and move forward that way.
Oh, behoove. Behoove. My dad uses that term. You're the only other person I've heard use that. But
I'm 65 years old.
Yeah. Oh God. But that's the lesson here. It's process, not results. And that is what you have to look at the process of what the Bills did. The results were amazing, what they did, but that's what you said, those little signposts, those little lessons of what they did. That's what you have to look at, as opposed to like, holy shit, in 2 years, and we're look at us. We're top. It's like, no, but that can get you to a higher floor for your whole team. Like, I mean, Daniel Jones has played fine, but the thing is, he's barely a quarterback right now. Like, and I get it. He has no receivers and everything. They're using him perfectly as a battering ram or getting him on the move and let him run as a scrambler. But that's not sustainable if you have a bad game script. Like it's very, very hard to win that way consistently, especially when things get tighter as the season goes along. That's why, yes, what Daniel Jones has been fine and everything. And yes, he needs a chance with all the receivers. But that's the thing they're maximizing how he's being used right now. He's still a fumble machine. He's still, sometimes when he drops back, it's like, holy shit, speed up that sundial of like your timing, like just a little bit. So that's why you don't want to talk yourselves into that going like QB wins. Like, let's stay away from that argument.
Yeah. I just think that you figure out, this is house money for them. You figure out why this is working, and you say, you know what? The process has been really good. There are elements of this that are really encouraging, but don't get sucked into thinking that what is there right now is the only thing you can make work. On the Seahawks side of this, it's a little bit different because
Scrooge McDuck swimming in coins right now.
Well, they've already kind of done this where they're in the rebuild process, and we'll see what they have to their decision is what they want to do with Geno, right? But they might be in a very different spot because there's a chance they have a top 5 pick in this draft, even if it's not their pick, because every game the Broncos lose puts the Seahawks potentially in a position to go get a quarterback. The Seahawks, we'll see if they make the playoffs. If they don't, and they're picking 17th and 6th, they absolutely could just drop a different quarterback into the situation. What's happened with Geno is amazing, but if you're in a spot, and I think same kind of conversation, if you're in a spot where you can conveniently draft a guy next spring and drop him into this scenario where you have 2 rookie tackles that have been really exciting.
Yes.
Lockett and Metcalf still there.
Yep.
Some of the pieces that you have on defense, do it. If you're not, and you say, all right, Geno, here's 1 year, 15 million, come back, you give me 1 more year as a starter. That's fine. But I think that they're in a much cleaner situation to me than the Giants are, because they've already kind of kickstarted this rebuilding process. They've had better picks.
Are we about to have like the spring of Geno, like the Geno sweepstakes? Is there going to be a Geno sweepstakes this winter? I like, because just being a free agent, like That's actually like a kind of like a subplot I didn't even think about until right now. But no, but they I mean, nailing a draft. I mean, this is like what happened with the Saints. This is what happened with the Seahawks a decade ago. Nailing a draft really helps. I mean, getting two bona fide guys. Watching Charles Cross go against Khalil Mack was awesome. Like he no help. Like yes, once in a while they gave him chip out, but dropping back over and over and be able to hold up on the left side, that's awesome. On top of that, with Abe Lucas, Tariq Woolen's been the standout, a 5th round corner. He's boom or bust. He leads DBs and penalties right now, but he also leads in rookies and interceptions. So it's kind of that he's a rookie quarter. Kobe Bryant's been fine. Kenneth Walker's been as a cartoon character. He's so much fun to watch. But that's the only way I can describe it. I'm trying to figure out how to describe how he runs. But I went with Sonic on Sunday. I'm going with the cartoon character now. But that's what it is that I think they have so many ways to pivot and so many options because they've replenished. It's not all theory. They've already hit on some picks, so they already have guys, the building blocks that we talk about. And on top of it, now they can kind of pivot how they want to. They can go down the Geno route and go like, hey, we got some exciting young players. Let's get this quarterback. But that's what's going to come down to, how the Geno signing goes. And I think he can sustain this for the rest of the year because it's week in, week out. Even if it's some bad defense he's gone against, he's doing enough stuff, real stuff, and caring. He's maximizing his teammates. It's not like he's like, wow, they're just dunking on guys. He is making 1% throws week in, week out. So I think this is sustainable. And now we have a lot of guys that we're going to replenish or bring back for next year and the future. They could be competing a lot quicker than I ever thought. Like I thought this would be a 2-year rebuild before all this, but that's what happens when you nail a draft. So I don't know. For them, I think they're just playing with house's money and they can decide where they want to go. But it's all going to come down to that Geno free agent sweepstakes.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with if they're in a position to draft a quarterback. I mean, how much you commit to Geno, whether you want to. I think that's going to be the biggest question facing them. Yeah. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I did want to talk about two more things. Yeah, I did want to talk about two more things. One, with the Giants' decisions, Daniel Jones would make $30 million on the franchise tag next year. Saquon Barkley would make $9 million. Okay.
Yeah.
Which would you rather use?
Barkley.
I think I would too. And you have Saquon back for 1 more year as you try to navigate what next season is, and you have Tyrod already under contract. So that's just something to consider. Yeah. On the Seahawks side of this, I find it so fascinating how quickly the fortunes change for some of these general managers, right?
Unbelievable.
John Schneider was a genius in 2010, 2011, 2012. He went on a heater unlike anything we'd almost ever seen before in the NFL. Yep. Going the 2010 draft, 2011 draft, 2012 draft. You get Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson in rounds 2 and 3 in one single draft. You get Richard Sherman in the 5th round, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, all of those guys. And then for years, they couldn't find anyone. They found more players in this year's draft than they found like in the last 3 or 4 drafts combined.
Yep.
And I don't think that's because John Schneider is a worse or better drafter now than he was 3 or 4 years ago. It helps when the swings that you're taking are mostly on high value positions. When you're taking swings on tackles and corners instead of drafting LJ Collier and linebackers and running backs in the first couple rounds. I know Kenneth Walker works, but if Kenneth Walker was the only hit in this draft, we wouldn't be talking about this draft in any exciting way. Right. Even if Kenneth Walker is a good player.
Getting 2 starting tackles and 2 starting quarters is pretty awesome draft.
It's just, and when you have a GM that's struggling a little bit, and when you have somebody that's like, oh man, do we move on from this guy?
Yeah.
So many of these guys that have been able to stick around a little bit have ended up changing their narrative completely. Like Jason Light went on a 2-year run in like 2015, 2016. That was about as bad as it gets. Yep. I mean, he traded up in the 2nd round to get a kicker. They drafted Vernon Hargraves in the top 10. His first free agent class in 2014, that was the Anthony Collins, Michael Johnson free agent run. That was just, I mean, every single one of these guys for the most part has some sort of black mark on their resume. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you stick with these guys, they end up pulling out of it. And I don't know if that's an argument for or against some of these people keeping their jobs, but I do think that draft runs especially are far, far more random than we ever give them credit for. And I think what the Seahawks are doing right now is the perfect example of that.
I know. And I mean, even guys like Howie Roseman, who's been around for forever, but I mean, I 18 months ago, I was ragging on him. Yeah. Cap Armageddon. Like that's why they had to like replenish their whole team because they had just had signed so many vets, and he whiffed on like 4 or 5 drafts in a row, like where they barely even had starters like of any of their draft picks, not even just their first rounders. And now look at them now, the executive year leader right now. And then you got guys like Les Snead goes through the Jeff Fisher era. Oh my God. It was like, this guy, he's drafting Tavon Austin in top 10, 170-pound receiver. Greg Robinson, number 2. And then he gets Aaron Donald with the second pick. So that just goes to show you scouting and drafting.
Yeah. They drafted Greg Robinson at 2 and they drafted Aaron Donald at 14.
Yep. Yeah. So that just goes to show you how this works. Trent Baalke. I remember when we had the Seahawks 49ers rivalries, when they were 2 of the best teams in the league at the same time. And I remember an article, and I want to find it someday. And it was saying like Trent Baalke has found like the hidden margins by drafting hurt players, injured
Marcus
players.
Lattimore.
Yeah, that was the thing that was his edge that he found. And it was like, oh no, that was not an edge whatsoever. And then after 3 weeks, it was like, oh my God, this guy's, he really put a good team together in Jacksonville. Now it's like, oh no, never mind. But then the other flip side of this is like, yes, some of these guys, you give them enough time and they figured it out. But like Matt Millen got forever with the Lions, and it's just like, oh God, that's a different era and everything. But that's the wrong side of this, of giving these guys chances. But I know a lot of these guys, they get different eras with it, but then it's funny how the narratives change by one draft class and nailing it. I mean, it's really, really funny.
All right. Last thing before we get on from this game, Kadarius Toney traded to the Chiefs for a 3rd-round pick and then a conditional something else late round consideration, I think. What do you think of this?
Interesting. Third's a little rich, I thought, but he is a first rounder. Kadarius Toney is super talented. Like that has never been the question with him. It's just his consistency as a player and as a teammate with everything. He is always hurt, or seems to have an off-field thing. And sometimes those injuries, the team made it out, like the Giants were making it out like, we don't know what the injury is, but he's injured. Like they basically more or less would say that. He is so talented. I think the Chiefs, they don't have a lot committed to their receivers. They drafted Sky Moore this year, but Juju, MVS, and Hardman, they different ways they can get away from them after this year. They've all been fine starters for him this year because they have this guy named Patrick Mahomes who makes anyone look like a fine starter. But I think this guy it's a interesting home run swing. I think if they can get his head on straight, make him consistent. He lacks a lot of detail, like he'll be short on routes or anything, but get the ball in this guy's hands, Kadarius Toney. Oh my God, he's top 5 in the league with the ball in his hands. He's incredible. But that's the thing is, I think if Andy Reid's one coach I trust, one of the few coaches I trust that can get the most out of him. I think it's interesting though, if the Giants sold them Andy Reid and them a lemon, is Andy Reid ever going to talk to Kafka ever again? Like, and go like, yeah, what'd you guys just do to me? What'd you just sell me? So it's a bet because Tony's hasn't done anything this year. Literally hasn't done anything this year. And like last year he was flashing, and then all of a sudden he fell off as the year went along. So yeah, I'm very curious if they can maximize him, because if they can, he's a pretty dynamic talent that would be an interesting kind of flavor for the Chiefs offense.
It's a 3rd-round pick.
Whatever.
If it doesn't work out, it's like, this is a bet on your infrastructure. And I think the Giants have done a fantastic job, obviously, in year 1, but this group didn't draft Kadarius Toney.
No,
This group has no allegiance to Kadarius Toney. Again, they're in a mode where they should be trying to stockpile draft picks and figure out like how we can get more assets. So the Chiefs are betting if we bring him in and play him with Patrick Mahomes and we're slinging the ball around all the time, is that hamstring suddenly feeling a little bit better, feel a little bit looser than it might have in New York. I think like that's the bet, and I understand the bet. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I totally understand it from both sides. From both sides, I get why you'd want to do this.
And this Chiefs offense is so good, and they change up the personnel so much. He doesn't have to be a guy right away. It's not like OBJ last year with the Rams. So they have Cup and everything, but it's not like he drops in and it's like, oh my God, we need him to play 30 to 40 snaps. It's like, no, we can ease him along. And then probably after Thanksgiving, we'll really see the package for Toney and everything.
Juju's a free agent. I mean, Mecole Hardman's a free agent. I think this is something that it's worth it in the short term for what sort of juice he can give you, and potentially in the long term if you found somebody who locks in and has a ton of talent. So
he's only in his second year. If they hit, it's like they got him cost control for next 2 years guaranteed. It's
that guy moves around differently, and I understand wanting to see what you could do with him in your little ecosystem that you've built there in Kansas City. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back with the Bills offense against the Packers defense. Did you guys know that almost 42% of men experience moderate to extensive hair loss in their lifetime? There are options available, though, to help stop balding in its tracks. The sooner a person starts treatment for hair loss, the easier it is to keep the hair they have. Roman offers clinically proven medication to help treat hair loss, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. Roman offers both prescription medication and over-the-counter treatments. They also offer specially formulated shampoos and conditioners with ingredients that fortify and moisturize hair to look fuller. Research shows that 80% of men who use prescription hair loss treatment had no further hair loss after 2 years. Research also shows that men who use hair loss treatments feel better about their overall appearance. Getting started is simple. Just complete a free online visit, and then a U.S. licensed healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman ships it directly to you in discreet packaging with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward and discreet. Treatment starts at $20 per month on a quarterly plan. Right now, Roman has a special offer for our listeners. Use this link to get 20% off your first order. Just go to GetRoman.com/Mays today. That's GetRoman.com/MAYS for 20% off. I know when I sit down to watch football on a Sunday, having a great setup is necessary. The right amount of TVs, the right comfortable couch. If that setup is important to you before you kick back for a few hours, a lot of you could probably use an upgrade to your seating. And for that, you're probably going to want to check out our friends at Burrow. Burrow has free shipping on every order, no matter how large or small, which can save you an average of $100 on bigger items like a couch. With iconic modular seating systems and everything from coffee tables to credenzas, Burrow is your one-stop shop for outfitting your home in style. Their new Union collection is their biggest, deepest, plushest, widest modular seating designed to date. Show Burrow you're listening to the Athletic Football Show by shopping at burrow.com/Mays and get $75 off your first order. That's Burrow, BURROW.com/Mays for $75 off. Burrow.com/Mays.
So, Frank, here's the plan.
All right. Talking about the Bills against the Packers this week, this is the matchup that interests me the most. Obviously, there's been so much consternation and conversation about what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense. Packers offense isn't very good right now.
Yeah.
The Packers defense, for as frustrating as elements of it are, is really good in some areas, right? They're fourth in dropback success rate. They've been really good against the pass. They lead the NFL in EPA per dropback on third downs in a lot of defined passing situations. So you have this group that has a ton of really good pass defenders and is built to stop teams throwing the ball, playing against a team in Josh Allen and the Bills that looks absolutely incredible right now. So while this isn't maybe the Super Bowl preview that it could have been billed as before the season, I do think this element of the game is still particularly interesting.
And the Bills' run game has improved, but it's not, it's not anything to write home about. It's what was it? It's the stoppable force versus the movable object. That's what kind of this matchup is a little bit. But it's this Packers defense reminds me not as much a scheme, but kind of like how they play, kind of like the Colts era, Manning era Colts defenses, like with Bob Sanders, everything, where they're bend but don't break. You can pound the rock on us all day. We're just going to let you bend but don't break. We're going to stop the pass.
Yeah, but if you're going to be built like that, you need to be the best offense in the league every single year.
That's what I'm getting at. This is a defense built with a really good offense on the other side of the ball. Like, they're going to have to pass to catch up. They have to catch up to us. They're not made for 13-14, 17-20 type battles. That's not like where the other offense could just sustain drives on them. But no, I as I say that, I'm just about to have a go against my own just joke right there. But this Packers defense, they're third most 3-and-outs they have forced in the entire NFL, just behind the Eagles and Broncos. So they get off the field. They have the fewest percentage of throws over 20 yards against them in the entire NFL. They're blitzing a little bit more, but why they're blitzing a little bit more is on first and second down. And it's because they've been in base defense more often than they were last year under Joe Barry. 38% compared to 23%. They were on dime on 17% of their first and second down snaps last year. This year is 0. And so they have linebackers.
Still can't stop the run.
And they still can't stop the run. They are the worst defense. They are the second worst defense. They are the second worst defense in the entire NFL against 21 personnel on the other side of the ball. Why that matters is the Bills offense has started using 21 personnel more than ever with Reggie Gilliam on the field. They pass out of it, but still they're getting into those looks. Their Packers overall are a bottom 10 defense with 4 DBs on the field. Now, so not only just against 21 personnel, the Bills last week against the Chiefs, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, is they went to 12 personnel. So they had 2 tight ends on the field 7 times, which is more than they ever done. Double their league rate, or their season rate. So they're trying to, I think that's what the Bills are going to lean into for this game plan, especially coming out of the bye. I just noticed that with numbers and just watching this team. These guys have been studying this whole season, the Packers defense. They're doing some self-scouting. I think they will lean into these pro, which is 21 and 12 personnel groupings, because that is not what the Packers are really good against.
Yeah, you want to get those DBs off the field and get more linebackers on the field. I think that makes a lot of sense, even if it's to throw the ball. Yes. Watching the Packers run defense, so the 30th in run defense EPA, 29th in run defense success rate, it's really frustrating to watch them, especially after what they put into that area of their team resource-wise this offseason. To go draft Devontae Wyatt in the first round, to go draft Quay Walker in the first round. They're just not a physical team up front. Like, you watch them, and you talk about being in those 5-man fronts and being in base defense more often. Those 5-man fronts, those like penny fronts with the 1 linebacker, and they've done it some of that. They've had 2 linebackers in the field a decent amount this year, but they've done some of that. But any 5-man front, and we talked about this last week when we were talking about why offense has fallen off a little bit. Those are designed to prevent double teams up front because every single guy is covered, right?
Yep.
And the problem with the Packers' run defense is no one needs to get double teamed. Right. Every single guy, when you watch them play Washington, they're fitting up one-on-one, 1 man for every guy up front. And it's easy. It looks easy. They don't, if you're going to play in a penetrating style where you're getting a lot of negative plays, that's fine. But you can't not play that way and not eat up blocks. Yes. You got to do one or the other.
Yes.
And that's the problem, is they're doing neither. Kenny Clark goes backdoor all the time trying to make plays. So he's trying to play that way. And then every other guy that they have is just eating 1 block, 1 guy, and letting guys get to the second level cleanly all the time. It's just, I'm sitting there watching them like, what is this supposed to be? Like, either eat up blocks or go make plays. And they do neither of them. And their linebackers are these tall, rangy guys, but they're not playing with a lot of physicality. They're eating a lot of blocks. So it's a frustrating group to watch in that area. It's not surprising based on the numbers and what you're looking at. But when you actually see them play against a team like Washington, where from right to left, you got Tyler Larson, Sadiq Charles, and Cornelius Lucas, like, eating up
3
those
more
guys
names
up
that
front.
I could have named.
That's not great. And that's the problem right now, is it's not like they're playing against the 2016 Cowboys and getting mowed down all the time. It doesn't seem to matter who's on the other side of the ball. They cannot stop the run. And I think it's partially the way they're coached, partially the way the team is constructed. But either way, it's very, very frustrating.
It
but
is. Sorry. Oh, no, I was going to say, and that's a great point, is that all those guys on the ball, like you're saying with the penny fronts, the thing with that is, if one guy is not gap sound and the offense runs a zone run play, that is gash. It's like almost guaranteed. Unless somebody just makes a superhero play. It's just math.
But you got to make it. You have to make it if you're going to play that way.
Yes, you have. Exactly. You have to have one guy make the play. Not everybody else plays their rules. One guy goes superhero. Like, it doesn't make sense. And I've mentioned this before. Quay Walker, the rookie linebacker for the Packers, outstanding athlete, still learning how to play off-ball linebacker. And you can tell offenses have gotten after him with a lot of the split zone and jet motion stuff, just capturing his eyes. And that's where the naked game has actually affected this team as well. But that's also the dangerous part of this combination. You play all these guys on the ball. So say if you're in a 3-4 front, bare front with 2 off-ball linebackers, which is with Quay Walker there, they run this zone stuff. So you have all these guys, and then you have Kenny Clark going backdoor, and then you have Quay Walker running himself out of the play. Now that's basically 2 bodies you don't have to block. And that's what keeps
happens all the time.
All the time. This is when sometimes this happens to a defense once a game, and it happens. It just happens. That's how football is. But it's the fact that this is happening 4 or 5 times a game against every opponent. That's where this is dangerous. And this is where you're going against a team that's coming out of a bye week. So that's a dangerous combination that they can maybe find holes to pick at.
Yeah, they have 50 splash plays against the run this season as a defense, which is like middle of the pack. It's 21st, which is actually higher than I expected it to be when you actually watch them play.
Yeah.
But on the back end, they still have tons of really good pass defenders. You go back and watch that Washington game. There are a couple bad moments, but like Jair Alexander's in good coverage on that throw to Terry McLaurin. There's really nothing you can do about that. I mean, that every once in a
lot
while,
of money to make
yeah,
plays.
exactly. So every once in a while, that stuff is going to happen. But
Yeah.
you watch some of the things they do on the back end, and there was one play where they were in like a straight up man look, the way they were lined up, and they dropped to cover 2 with one of the safeties in the flat. And Heineke tries to throw an interception that Rasul Douglas almost picks off. Douglas had like a couple really nice PBUs in that game. Amos, they really tried to catch him on a cover 3 look where they had a corner going. The tight end was running a corner route against cover 3, and they were trying to pull Amos to the middle of the field, and he gets all the way back to the sideline to make a play. Every single one of those guys has those moments, and they're mixing it up on the back end. They're playing more man than they did last season. You saw Jair Alexander following guys around. Does he do that more with Diggs in this game than he would have earlier in the season with Justin Jefferson? So I think on the back end, they are figuring this thing out, and they are playing really, really well. The problem is it just doesn't match up to anything they're doing on the front end, and whether that will matter against a team like Buffalo, I think ends up becoming the biggest question.
Yeah, and I would be more worried about this for the Bills' perspective, because that's the thing. We're knocking the Packers a little bit. Their pass coverage is good. Like it's
really good.
It's good.
They're the best team in the league on third down. The best team.
The Jets tore him up in the run game, but watch Zach Wilson try to throw the ball against this Packers defense. It was not pretty. Like it was because they're squeezing everything, they're moving. What you're saying too is they mix up the coverages because they can. They don't have to play just zone. They can play man because they have some dudes on the outside. No, it's a great point, but no, and like I would feel more worried about the Bills' offense, but like we've talked about this several times, is Josh Allen is willing to nickel and dime, and the Packers are going to make him nickel and dime. That's what they do. Like I said before, fewest throws, 20 yards or more. So it's going to be kind of a nickel and dime fest, and I think they'll change up the looks. Well, I think that's going to be one way that they can make Josh Allen double clutch the ball a couple times, and hopefully this is when they're passing the ball. So I do think they do have match up fairly well against the Bills passing attack, which not a lot of teams can say they can do.
All right. We're going to talk about Niners Rams here really quick.
Welcome, Scrooge.
It's a Ghost of Christmas Future Past, I assume.
Yeah.
Joke.
Two Scrooge references in one show.
So this is what we want to talk about with the Niners and the Rams. It was a horrible transition, by the way. I wanted to discuss this just because the Niners and the Rams were the two teams that were in on this Christian McCaffrey trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Rams have built this way over the last couple of years. We know this. Fuck them picks has become more than a meme at this point. Right. And the Rams won a Super Bowl doing that. And now you look at where the Rams are. And I think it's not only because of the picks that they've traded away, right? I mean, it's the offensive line injuries. You can't really account for that. But the missteps they've made with Allen Robinson and the ways they spent their money this offseason. Are the Niners potentially looking at what their future could be with what the Rams are right now after trading away all of those picks? It's a little bit simplistic, but I do think it's something to consider when you think about the ways that the Niners are building this thing right now.
They are, in the sense, it's a little different because the Rams went after so many vets, like, the CMC stuff. And then the 49ers, their draft capitals on Trey Lance, a young quarterback. So that's like where the difference is. But I think the lesson is the same in the sense that the errors that you make because you have less resources become exponential. Like when you only have a finite amount of draft picks and a finite amount of cap space, and you're doing this tightrope act that the Rams want to do every year, when you sign Allen Robinson, who is a negative player by all accounts. I mean, not like I'm not saying like personality thing, but he has not been a dynamic player whatsoever, and you're paying him to be a dynamic player. Well, then that meant you are not using that resources to anything else, to add to your offensive line room, to add to your running back room, to add.
When it's the only thing you can do in terms of the resources that are available to you, and it doesn't work out, it's much more noticeable.
When the denominator of moves you can make is very low, like if you go 0 for 2, it's 0 for 2. It's 0%. Yeah. Like that's what it is. So that's where you can see that's what the lesson is with this, is that, okay, we only can make, yes, when you nail it, you nailed it. Like, and the Rams nailed it last year, but they still needed bounces to go their way. Like, that's the thing. That's the thing with football. And that's where having resources allows you to pivot and lets you just kind of eat up all these bad bounces that you get as a franchise and as a team. But that's the thing, is now you're hoping for Kyren Williams to be your savior for the Rams. Like, and I like Kyren Williams, but he's a 195-pound, 465 running back, like James White Jr. Like, I mean, I do like him, but
What the Rams need
saying that's
is
your
one
juice
more
now.
guy. Yeah, the Rams need one more guy who's a little bit slow. That's what the
Little
Rams
bit
need.
slow.
I'm sure he could be fine, but it is
No,
really
yeah.
funny that the savior of this offense is a guy whose biggest knock coming into the NFL is he didn't have enough explosiveness.
And I like him. Like, he's a great pass protector, great pass catching back. But it's the thing. He's a 4'6", 195-pound running back. Let's call a spade a spade. So that's what this is that now you're relying on these guys to step up when they should just be easing into roles. And that's what happens. Is right now the 49ers had a incredibly backwards backup plan and having Jimmy G stick around, and that ended up working out decent for him and saving their season. I mean, essentially, after Trey Lance went down. But that's the thing, is now these moves have to hit. Like, you have to pay the credit card at some point. And I think that's what exactly is going on. It's kind of funny just to see these teams, like the 49ers, like a year or two behind where the Rams are at now. But that's the thing, is they have to hit on this. Otherwise, then 4 or 5 years from now, if this regime's still there, I should say maybe 3-4 years, it's going to come due at some point. But that's what's scary about it.
One of the things that the Rams have done a pretty decent job, the Niners have done a pretty decent job of, even though if they're handing out some of these extensions, their cap is in pretty good shape. You know, they're not eating all of the dead money over the last couple of years that the Rams were eating on the Goff contract, the Brandon Cooks contract, the Gurley contract.
Yeah.
The Rams weren't in the same sort of healthy financial place for most of this time because of some of the things that they had to move on from. The Niners right now have $10 million in dead money, essentially, on their 2023 cap. Most of that is from the D Ford contract.
Okay.
Other than that, they are currently in this moment slated to have $16 million in cap space, and that's after taking on $12 million of base salary with Christian McCaffrey. And I would assume that, so you look at Captain McCaffrey's contract, obviously there's no signing bonus or anything left on there. Yeah. So if they want to convert some of that from McCaffrey's contract and just put some more dead money on 24 and 25, they easily can. So this is a situation where they could be looking at $25 million in cap space pretty easily next offseason. So they do have some wiggle room that way, in the way that the Rams often haven't over the last few years because of the way that they've spent. Some of the guys hitting free agency next spring for San Francisco, Mike McGlinchey, who hasn't played very well anyway, when you look at things. But at the same time, it's like, you got to replace a tackle. You got to do this. You got to do that. Right. So I do think that they're in pretty good shape, all things considered, but there are no more cheap reinforcements coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important to understand, is that $25 million, that's what you got, because no draft picks are coming in here to help this thing out.
And you're going to have to pay Bosa down the road. But so it's like, then the needle becomes even smaller. That's why you just have to hit it. Just even the little hole that you have to hit is even smaller now. I think that's the thing. It's like, it's kind of like almost they're geared up for next year. Like that kind of like, that's where that window seems like it's going to align perfectly at least. But no, like you said, that's what you got. That's your cap space, and you have to make it work somehow.
Bosa has a $17.8 million cap hit next year. So if they extend him, there's a world where he makes less against the cap in 2023 than he does right now. So they've done a very good job for the most part. Their financial guy, Parag, has been there forever, right? I mean, they've done a very good job of kind of keeping those contracts clean, making sure they have wiggle room no matter what they've done. So I just think it's interesting. I think you have these two teams in the same division that have kind of taken the same mindset when it comes to this stuff. And I know it's not a one-for-one comparison, but the move the Niners made for Trey Lance is spurred on by them not getting Matthew Stafford.
Right.
Like, by not getting Stafford, you put yourself in this situation. So it's, even though they're not totally related and maybe they're not directly causal, I do think that there is a link between these two things. When you watch what the Rams have done and how they've built and how they've won, I think the Stafford thing is part of the reason they have Trey Lance. I think that this current environment, I still believe this. Like, Trey Lance is the quarterback for the Niners, I think, at least to a certain degree, because the Niners played against Josh Allen in 2020 and watched that happen. We're like, fuck this. Like, I'm out. Like,
never again.
In 2019, in the Super Bowl, they played against Patrick Mahomes. In 2020, they played against Josh Allen in that weird game in Arizona. I think it was on Monday night where they had to go play it in Arizona because the fires. And Josh Allen makes like 4 or 5 throws in that game that are like, make your head explode.
Yeah.
And then the Rams, and then I think in that moment, it's like, all right, we probably need to go do something, whether it's Brady or Stafford or whatever. And then they miss out on those guys. And then whether it was for Mac initially who cares? They eventually land on Lance because they look at all these other dominoes that have fallen and what the landscape at the position is and say, all right, we got to go get a guy that can just change the dynamic of the game for us.
Yep.
And that was supposed to be what Trey Lance was. And we talked about this a little bit the night that McCaffrey got traded. Now he has to become that guy because you're not getting help from elsewhere in order to build up the rest of this roster next year for the most part. What you got outside of that $25 million in cap space, that's essentially what you're going to have.
Yeah. And like, it's so funny. Like, it's just it's like the one time Shanahan was like, I don't want to play in expert mode anymore. And I'm going to get a quarterback that can go make some plays for me. And it's like right back where we started. It's like, because that's where it might end up being. Like, it's just so funny like that. But no, I agree with you. I think a lot of teams looked around and were just like, we need a dude that can make something. Like, it's just too hard to like just dial up a perfect play every single time. And that's why the moves happen. I'm excited to see now too. And this is just more of the schematic part. I know we just talked about all the narrative stuff, but I'm excited to see like another week with CMC practicing and how they use him. Like that is something I'm like very, very curious to watch in this game. The play I keep thinking about is, and CMC is the best runner of this, is those choice routes. Deebo Samuel running one from the backfield against the Packers last year in the playoffs. And it's like, oh, now you got CMC running it. Like now they can change up who runs these. Like it's just stuff like that. I think it's going to be really
makes
cool.
sense.
It does.
On a functional level, when you look at how the pieces fit together schematically, dropping Christian McCaffrey and a player with his skill set into this situation makes sense. But again, you're paying a premium to go get that. So it better work.
It better work.
Because if it doesn't work in a couple of years, you're going to be sitting and staring at a pretty bare cupboard wondering, all right, now where do we go? Now, how do we get out of this? Because they've made their bed. Yeah.
I think the bill comes due in 2024. That's how I've been feeling about this 49ers team.
I think so too.
I'm not saying like you're saying anything different. I just think they got 18 months to make this work. That's kind of how I'm looking at this team. It's like, okay, this is what they have right now, right? Because no matter, Lance got to be the starter next year. They can't do the charade again with Jimmy G. So I just think that this next 18 months is like, they better make it work. And they have basically 2 bites of the apple to do it.
And the one other thing that I haven't really thought about, have not mentioned for sure, one of their best players is 35 years old. He's a 35-year-old left tackle. Like, how much longer is that going to last? So it does feel like, I understand for 1 year, right? For 2022, if you're looking at the landscape of the NFC and you think about where everyone else is and how much of an opening there is, as a short-term move, it's like, all right, I get it. Like you bring in McCaffrey, it's like, all right, let's see if we can push ourselves over the top. There is no one that we are afraid of in our conference. If we get there with our defense and the players that we have, maybe we got a shot to steal one this year. And then for the 2023 version, it's okay. We have this now one more outlet for our young quarterback. We're trying to figure it out, but you are pushing your chips in for that 2-year run. It's 2 different versions of it because one's with Jimmy and one's with Lance, but I still think that's kind of the mindset overall.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's when we did the CMC live reaction, I think that's where it came down to. It's like they looked at the NFC and they said, why not? Like this. And I'm not saying good, bad, or whatever, but I just think that's what their thinking was. They just looked at their division. They looked at this conference and go, man, we can get hot for a month. Like we can dial up. Our defense is going to keep us in every game unless we play the Chiefs. And then let's see if we can just dial up some good game plans every single week, which Shanahan's one of the best at doing. So I think that's exactly what their line of thinking was.
Just in terms of this game specifically, I'm definitely still worried about what the Rams pass protection is going to look like against this defense. They had absolutely no answers the last time these two teams played, and I don't know what has changed to the point that you think you'd have some answers now. So I don't envision a lot of points being scored in this game, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, I think in the Rams coming out of the bye, I think they're just going to try and muck this up as much as possible. I'm curious what McVay's answers are going to be. That's actually, he's one of the best, I think, of adapting and changing and maximizing what he's got, but I want to see what that looks like now. So after a bye week and knowing that they have to do it, it's like, I mean, he made a lot of bets on himself really with his team building. So I'm curious, after a bye week, they're probably, as Hackett and the Broncos staff were doing, sleeping at the office during the bye week. So I'm curious what this offense is going to look like on coming out of the bye.
All right, we're going to take one more quick break here, and then we're going to come back and talk about what the hell is going on with the Patriots quarterback situation.
If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, or stronger immune system in a really easy, natural way, you've got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure we're not all fans of taking a huge amount of pills in the morning, but with Athletic Greens, you get rid of all those extra vitamin bottles and make some room in your cabinet for an all-in-one solution that actually tastes great. Athletic Greens has really pleasant, tropical flavor. It has a sweetness to it that's actually really nice in the morning. I always make it when I'm making my coffee. It takes 30 seconds. Pop it in a glass, mix it with some water, and you're done. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality minerals, whole food source superfoods, adaptogens, and probiotics to help start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you 1 free year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/maze. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/MAYS to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and trying out the service, it all makes sense. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those savings directly to you. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate, whether you're buying for one or for a family. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with your existing contacts. To get a new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/maze. That's mintmobile.com/MAYS. Cut your wireless plan to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/maze. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% sure that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You add your job posting and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And with simple tools like screening questions, you can make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to hire and why. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/maze. That's linkedin.com/MAYS to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
What are you?
All right, we used that because we really couldn't think of a better way to intro this Patriots situation. What is the Patriots quarterback situation right now? I was just sitting there watching that game on Monday night, and I was distracted, obviously, because I was loving life. But as you sit back and think about what's going on in New England, I was like, what is happening here? Like, what is the plan? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? Because earlier this week, Field Yates from ESPN reported that Mac Jones is going to be the starting quarterback. Bill Belichick came out and said Mac Jones is going to be the starting quarterback. So what was all of that? Is that some indication that Mac doesn't have kind of a stranglehold on this thing moving forward, that they're not as committed to him long-term as we thought? Is that truly a spot where, like Bill Belichick said today, he just wasn't healthy enough to play the whole game. So he wanted to play. Right. We put him out there, but he wasn't healthy enough to play the whole game, so we pulled him out. Why, under any circumstances, would you do that when the moment you yank him, the crowd went insane.
Insane.
This is a guy you drafted in the first round last year. So
you're trying to MVP for him last year.
You're trying to prove a point to him or to someone else by fine, if you want to play, we'll let you play. But then you give him that moment, and like Jacoby Myers afterwards is being like, that was just wrong to do that to him. I just don't understand what the entire point of this was.
I don't either. And it feels like it's out of spite. Like, I don't know if there's
I don't know.
There's some smoke with Patricia and Judge, and I guess Mac Jones having a tiff and not on speaking terms. I love how we have to say Patricia and Judge as one thing. They're in lockstep, Sickfield and Roy. But really that's what apparently there's some smoke with that. And honestly, I don't want to be the professor of body language, but that's what it read to me. Is like that guy gets benched. He throws the pick, especially he gets benched after he throws an interception. So it's like, oh my God, like that just fuel to the fire. And then there's no assistant coaches talking to him. Like he's just on the sideline by himself. And I know that's when the camera cuts to him, but the fact that I didn't see anyone talking to this guy, and I even looked at some stats with him, then anyone that wants to argue for Zappe and everything is the 1% or one stat I like to look at is true dropbacks, which is no play action, no screens, just straight dropbacks, no easy buttons. How do you do? Mac Jones has the second highest rate of true dropbacks in the NFL on his 120 dropbacks. Zappe has 99. So they're actually we're in the same kind of tier here. So it's not like the numbers are too like different there. Zappe is at 61%. That's 24th in the NFL in true dropback percentage. So you're going from second highest to 24th. Do you think they're giving this guy some easy buttons to like kind of go like, hey, let's make this guy look good? Like the pocket looks amazing for him. It's like a perfect, like it actually looks like a suit pocket. Like when he's sitting back there, Devontae Parker's dunking on guys every week. So like it's very curious, but they're giving him all the easy buttons he can. Early down play action rate, 17% for Mac Jones, 32% for Zappe. It's almost double. Like they
total. I looked at PFF numbers: 26% for Zappe, 11.7% for Mac. So they're using play action more than twice as often with Bailey Zappe as they are for Mac Jones.
They're using max protection 4 times as much with Zappe as opposed to Mac Jones. So this guy's getting like, so why not do this for Mac Jones? Like, but the stuff seems to be kind of working a little bit. And like poor Mac, like I can't believe I'm like on the flip side completely. I had to like rein people back last year and go like, hey, you know, he's fine, but you know, he's not like this crazy guy. I mean, this guy, his scramble numbers, he's scrambled 12 times already this year. 6 of those successful plays. He's a better scrambler than I think he gets.
He absolutely is.
He's an efficient scrambler. Like he knows when to do it. Zappe's only scrambled once. Like it's just, I don't know. It's I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes with this. Like neither of these guys are like, you know, breaking the door down. Like that true dropback percentage EPA. Jones and Zappe are both bottom 6 in the NFL by EPA on those. So it's not like,
if it's close, if it's even in the same zip code, why open the door the tiniest crack for the guy you drafted in the 4th round compared to the guy you drafted in the 1st round last season?
I don't get it. It's like they're doing it. I don't get it. It's a second year. It's got like 20-something starts. It's not like this is like a vet that you're like, hey, we got to get the young guy going. So like we'll do this out of spite. I've never seen anything like this. Like there's proof in the numbers. Like it's weird. It's a very weird situation. And we talked about in the pre-show. I feel like we have our ear to the ground pretty low with what's going on in the NFL and the rumblings. And both of you are just like, both of us are just like, what the hell's going on? Like I'm trying to figure it out too.
I just don't understand what the end game is supposed to be. Like you proved a point to Mac Jones by like putting him into that game and then yanking him out of it. Right. I don't. Okay.
Yeah. And I know. And both of these coaches, these offensive coaches, well, now they're offensive coaches, have a history of kind of ostracizing their players a little bit. Like, you know, like Patricia calling names to his players in Detroit, Joe Judge fighting all of his players, it seems like every week. So I don't know. It's very curious to me. Now, I was already upset enough that they're trying to like bench Kendrick Bourne. And now it's like because Patricia didn't like him. So now we have get this with Mac Jones. I don't know. It's a very, very interesting situation in New England right now.
Like if you're going to hit your ceiling over the next couple of years as a team in New England, this is to be the best case scenario for the last little gasp of the Bill Belichick tenure, isn't it probably with Mac Jones at quarterback?
You would think, right?
I don't know. Isn't it? That's kind of what it feels like to me. And to go through this weirdness, if he wasn't healthy enough to play a full game, just don't let him play.
Right.
Who cares if he's asking to play? Who cares if he's being annoying about it? It's like, you know what? I'm the coach. You're the quarterback. You sit out. And rather than doing whatever this is, it just, I don't know. And I think that it's so tempting to ascribe this ineffable genius to everything that the Patriots do. Or there's always a method to the madness. And every single choice has some hidden meaning behind it. And this is definitely going to work out. And this needed to happen. It's like sometimes I think stuff is just mishandled because it's mishandled. And that's kind of what this feels like, where it may not matter in the end, but what I leave this asking and thinking is just why? Why? Why did this need to happen this way? So maybe there's a chance that Mac Jones comes in, plays well, They give him a well-constructed offense that they handed to the 4th-round pick, and he plays well enough by the end of the season. This is all water under the bridge. We never remember this again. But why you needed to even give an opportunity for this to go even further south, if there are some personality conflicts or some bad blood or whatever there is right now, I just don't really know. So
especially for
your guess is as good as mine.
Especially for like Belichick, who like his whole shtick is acting annoyed with the media, like, you know, doing all that. And all of a sudden it's like, well, then you're opening yourself up for this. So if you want to avoid that and say like, why are you asking these questions? Don't do this. Yeah. So why is the answer for all this is it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of unfolds the next couple of weeks.
So I want to talk about, the Cardinals and the Vikings. I think we're going to scrap that because we have to talk about something that just happened. Jamar Chase out 4 to 6 weeks potentially with a hip injury. This is devastating because I just fucking traded for Joe Burrow in my fantasy league.
That's the way you go about it. I think it's devastating because they finally were starting to reconfigure this offense. Where it's a
real bummer. It's a real bummer. And so now they have the pieces to hopefully survive something like this. T. Higgins is a really good player. Tyler Boyd is a really good player. But I mean, you just look at the overall recipe of what the Bengals offense was.
Yep. Being
able to take some of those little small bites out of empty and out of those shotgun looks against some of those defenses, convincing you to, that's totally fine. But a huge part of the overall equation is when you get the looks.
Right.
You can throw it to number 1 and it turns into a 50-yard touchdown. So you really do kind of limit the ceiling of what they are, even if you still have some other guys that you feel pretty good about.
But that's the thing you say. They're too reliant on explosive plays. Well, when you have a guy that makes explosive plays like every game, that I would become I'll hit those easy buttons a little too often too. But that's the thing is that they were able, we would say it's like, oh, just run cover 2 against this Bengals team. They can't figure it out. Because that was all because of Chase and Higgins and Boyd in the middle. And it's like, don't run man against them. Like you literally can't run man or blitz because Burrow's just going to throw a go ball or back shoulder fade to Chase. I mean, the one last week against the Falcons against insert name corner here, like he's jogging on a back shoulder. Yeah, just number. He's catching a back shoulder fade where Chase is just jogging on it. And then he turns into a huge play. It's like, that's what that guy can do. So this is a huge bummer because I was actually, and as Bengals fans know, like I always kind of was just with this offense because it's just the down to down, drive to drive sustainability. Always like I just didn't like, but it just seemed like they were finally figuring out answers this last 3 weeks. And I was actually kind of going like, hey, good job and compliment. Even wrote about their shotgun run game this week. So this is a bummer because I just wanted to see them kind of figure it out because it seemed like they were starting to find answers in other ways.
Man. I mean, I don't know what it's going to look like. I guess essentially it looks like the plan that they've had where they really are just kind of like, all right, let's matriculate. Let's operate this way without some of those explosive plays. Yeah. And it's a pretty big part of the equation is getting getting 1 or 2 of those a game. So huge bummer because this team was absolutely rolling. All right. Yeah. One more thing we wanted to hit before we get to 4th screen and picks today. I wanted to talk about the Titans because the Tennessee Titans are a team that I think admittedly does not get a lot of attention on this show. And I think it's because they're a difficult team to talk about. You walk into any season and the Titans are 18th in this or 21st in this. And you look at even like Football Outsiders or EPA per play on offense, defense, they're somewhere right there smack dab in the middle. But they keep winning and they keep sticking around. It just reminds me of that Teddy KGB line from Rounders. So they're just hanging around. And that's what the Titans are. Yeah. And I want to talk about some of the ways they do that. Because I think some of the hidden aspects of how you win football games are some of the areas where the Titans are one of the best teams in the league. And 2 specifically we wanted to talk about today are 3rd down on defense and red zone. The Tennessee Titans, we already mentioned the Packers earlier today. Packers are the best team in the league in EPA per drop back on 3rd down. The Titans are 2nd. And over the last 2 years, the Titans, I believe, are number 1 in the entire NFL over the last 2 seasons.
And name some of their corners.
Yes. Yes. And that's with a revolving door at cornerback, especially this season. Okay. Last year they had Jenkins and Fulton and they played well, and they had Molden, but this year that has not been the case, and they're still second in the league. So how are they doing this? How are they kind of honing in on these situational aspects of the game that has allowed them to be better than we might expect?
Yeah. And I want to emphasize too, is that football coaching staffs in the NFL, they have an assistant coach. I'd say almost all, but most at least, for each situation. Football, the Chip Kelly quote when he finished with the Eagles, the 49ers, that 9-month stint with the 49ers, it was that he said, someone asked him what's the difference between college and the NFL. And you think, oh, it's players, all this. He goes, no, so much is about situations in the NFL and how the bucket plays. And why I'm saying that is because red zone's a situation, third down's a situation, backed up, short yardage, 2-minute, 4-minute. Those are all situations. And sometimes the assistant coach is really good at those situations. And for the red zone, especially in the offense, that is what's going on here. I think that's always so curious. I wish I could find out who it is for each team, because then you could start kind of crediting these guys. I know Todd Downing, the offensive coordinator for the Titans, he's a red zone guy like that. When he's been an assistant coach, that was always his aspect or his component that he looked at. But situational football is always emphasized because everything has to be bucketed. You hear me so many times on here, I'll say first and second down for this stat and third and fourth down for this stat, because they're totally different ballparks. Like they're just totally different games that are being played. Defenses can be totally different. But this Titans red zone offense, and this is what I'll focus on first, they've been, this year they're first in touchdown scoring. 2021, they're ninth, which is without Derrick Henry for a chunk of the year. That's still pretty impressive. Second in 2020, first in 2019. This is a stat we don't consider sticky. And they've been,
it's often very volatile.
Yes. And I've always thought red zone offense should come down to running the ball. Weird. I've never talked about running the ball before, but their rushing percentage in the red zone is just over 50%, which is ninth in that time span since 2019. So it's not like they're just give it to Derrick Henry and he's going to score for us. No, you can see the fingerprints and the creativity of an offensive coach because these situations are so unique. And when you watch this Titans offense and the play I wrote about, and it is this play action play against the Colts. And it's just understanding what you're getting because they're one-off plays. These are the plays that this is the Chiefs doing all their shovel stuff. And just like, these are the plays that you can really game up and change from week to week. And this play against the Colts, they put it's 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. They're down inside the 10-yard line. They put Jeff Swaim, the tight end, on a back and forth motion. And what that is the Colts have to match with sub personnel with 11. And when they're doing that, with Gus Bradley, you're getting cover 3. And especially if they're going to go in the red zone, they get 3 weak, which is the free safety rotates down away from the tight end side. So on this play, the Titans put the tight end back and forth in motion. It captures the linebacker and the safety, the down safety, because they're like, I use the term splash the water. Because you're just going, hey, what's over here? So all these guys are looking at this guy in back and forth motion. And they have this guy, Derrick Henry, in the game. So this safety that's in the box is like, I might have to tackle freaking Derrick Henry one-on-one. So I'm geeked up to play the run. And the Titans just run a simple little pop pass where Jeff Swaim looks like he's lead blocking. Derrick Henry looks like he's running a lead run play. And they just hit Robert Woods on a little over route, wide open for a touchdown. And it's just because they understood what the defense is playing down here and how to kind of use their own strengths against that defense. So that's just like one little tidbit there. Like, and they have against Washington, they scored on a beautiful screenplay where they had a guy in motion before the snap. It's just understanding what the defenses are playing against you in this situation, in this little compartment, and then how to game that up. And that's good game planning. And I know Todd and I try to be very neutral on this show, unless I'm talking about the Cardinals offense. So I'd be very neutral on this show. But no, Todd Downing, this is one of the best aspects of his game planning because I know his fingerprints are all over this. And that's why it's been sticky year after year.
And then third down defense is another area. And I think all of those are fantastic points. And I totally agree. I mean, if they're going to do this year and over year, it is a little advantage they're creating for themselves. Yep. And then on third down on defense this year, it's nothing crazy. It's kind of the same thing you're talking about with the red zone stuff, where it's like little tiny one-off designs or one-off plays where, all right, they're in a quarter shell and it's 3rd and 10 and they end up playing cover 2. But the way they end up playing cover 2 is both of the outside corners bail into the deep half, and they have both of the safeties drop in as hook defenders, with the linebacker still being the Tampa player. So they end up in cover 2 in this like very weird way.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan checks it down last week. They tackle short of the sticks. You're done. And it's just every single third down, there's something weird or specific where it's just like, okay, like this isn't the craziest idea that's ever been had, but it's really sound and everyone's in the right position and there's a lot of communication going on. And that's why coming into this season, really multiple different coaches that I talked to, a defensive coordinator, a head coach that calls plays. And I was asking them, like, where did you look for ideas this year? Like, where did you kind of look and say, I think this is interesting. Let me steal from this. They talked about the Titans defense. And the Titans defense wasn't this team that was doing all this crazy shit. Remember, we broke them down last year.
Yep.
And you watch it happen.
And we thought it was going to be super sexy. And we're like, oh, they just play really well.
Not. Like, it is just, and they're, and it is well disguised. You know, like whatever they line up in is not typically what they play. But it's not anything crazy where you got guys. I mean, there are plays where Byard will be walked down and he'll eventually run back to the post in the same way every defense does. But it's just guys that are communicating before the snap clearly all the time. David Long's interception was a second down play against the Colts, but still think it's worth mentioning. No, it was third down. Excuse me. It's third down, and they're in man, right? It's just one hole where the linebacker's just sitting there in the middle. And the interception by Matt Ryan looks awful. It looks awful because he throws it right to the linebacker.
Yeah.
The reason he does that is because David Long ran with the crosser, but he ends up getting back to the middle of the field because he reads Matt Ryan's eyes and it takes him back there, and he's standing there for the interception. Matt Ryan thought he was already gone. He thought he was already cleared out by the guy coming across. And that kind of stuff just happens all the time. Those middle of the field defensive players to them, Byard, the linebackers, they just all are so on the same page all of the time. And in those situational spots, they're just really good and have been really good.
Yep.
And I think if you're trying to figure out why are the Titans better than their collective players would lend you to believe, these are the types of things that I think we're talking about. These are the types of things that elevate you, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Like that is what the Titans are. And I think one other thing I did want to mention, beyond situational stuff, and I think they've done clearly a very good job with that. And Shane Bowen is their defensive coordinator, who also deserves mention as part of this conversation, along with Todd Downing. That moment that Vrabel had with Ben Jones coming off the field after last week's game, when Jones could barely play, he was so hurt, and he stayed in the game. That's another thing. Like, I think that we try to be fairly analytical on this show, and it's a lot of nuts and bolts and a lot of X's and O's and what's on the chalkboard. And I would admit that that's a blind spot for me in a way it probably shouldn't be sometimes, because that shit, when you watch that and you watch that moment that those two guys had, your veteran center, who's clearly a really important presence in your locker room, and that's the type of a relationship he has with the head coach, and that's the type of relationship the head coach has with him. That stuff matters. Yeah. Like, that absolutely matters. And I think that this team has created those little edges in a lot of different ways that has allowed them to kind of roll with the punches and stay relevant, even as they traded away their best offensive player. They've had some injuries. They've had this rotating cast of guys at cornerback. They've missed on some draft picks. It's not all or nothing, right? It's not black and white. We're like, they're great at this thing. Like, they've drafted really well, or all their signings have worked out.
Right.
We talked about this with the Seahawks. It's never going to be how it is. That stuff is always going to go up and down and up and down. But if you can have this stuff stay consistent, where situationally you're strong, you're well coached, the guys care, all of that, where you're looking at this team and wondering constantly, how is this happening? Yep. I think these are the answers to that question. And I think that, again, it's a little bit of a blind spot for the Titans and how they do this for me personally. And I think that's why every once in a while it's important to shine some light on it.
That's how you have to punch above your weight, is that human element, and just taking advantage of the situations you're given like that. That's how you punch above your weight in all sports. It's, if you don't make a lot of chances, it's make sure we maximize all of them. And it's also making it on the flip side for the team you're going against, and also the human element. That's the thing with football. Like, just even the play I talked about, because I can't help myself and bring it back to scheme. I can't help myself with this because the human element was involved in that play as well. That defensive player for the Colts thinks he has to tackle Derrick Henry.
Yes.
And so now let's take advantage of that. That is the human element that gets added to this. And that's what the Titans do better than anyone. I think that's why Vrabel, as much as like a former player and all that he is that he gets his players to care and play hard. And I think he's just a good coach. I think we've talked about, he's almost like a savant with some situation stuff, like in weird ways. Like he knows all the challenge rules. You watch him on the sideline. He gets after refs for all this stuff. Like he is really good with that stuff. And that's how you punch above your weight. That's what the edges are, is maximizing situations, the human element, and stuff on like game day decision-making. And that's what Vrabel and the Titans staff does.
And I've said this a ton before, and I do believe it. If you can find that play calling offensive head coach that gives you an advantage on that side of the ball every single moment, all the time, I think that is the biggest advantage you can have, because that sustains you for 10 years possibly.
Yep.
But you look at some of these guys who are CEO type coaches and what they've given their teams, especially this year, Dable, Vrabel, and then you compare that to Nate Hackett getting hired because he was going to draw up a bunch of really cool shit, and the Broncos being unable to operate as a football team in some of these situations. I'm just getting swayed. Like there's a lot of evidence coming in on the other side of this, where if you get the guy who can just put you in the right spots all the time, that is the type of guy we're chasing. I think we have a lot of examples of that this year.
It's funny. It's like, oh God, this analogy, because I'm just ad-libbing here, but we talk about, get a quarterback. Like, that's easy. Get a quarterback. That's how you have a good offense. Well, having a good team is like, get an offensive play caller, like a guy that can call plays and do all. It's like, okay, well, having a CEO type coach is almost like the Shanahan offenses of head coaches. It's like, just lift the bar up for everybody around them. Like, that's kind of what these guys do. I think.
And how many of those guys are there? It's the same as they are with quarterbacks. How many guys on the offense, like schemers?
Schemers.
How many schemers where it's like, all right, we have such an advantage that we can overcome the situational disadvantages that we have. Like Shanahan is one of those guys. And that's also the way that the Niners are building their team, where it's like, all right, we're going to try to thread this needle. We have Jimmy Garoppolo, but we think we can win a Super Bowl. And the Niners were a play away from going to the Super Bowl last year. Their Jaquaski dropped interception. They almost beat the Chiefs in 2019. So this idea of it's really hard to win a Super Bowl with a non-guy at quarterback, with Jimmy Garoppolo or Jimmy Garoppolo type at quarterback. Well, the Niners almost do it all the time. The Niners have Kyle Shanahan, right? Like there are only so many Kyle Shanahans.
Yep.
So in the same way, it's saying having an elite quarterback is the easiest way to being good. Having an elite play caller is the easiest way to being good. Other than that, there's only a limited number of those guys. You can't just conjure them out of thin air. So these guys that maybe aren't elite schemers, but do situationally put you in a good spot, is that how you try to sustain yourself if you can't get a Kyle Shanahan or you can't get a Patrick Mahomes? And I think that's a really good example here.
I think that's what it is. I mean, even just looking at a guy like McDermott, his fingerprints are on the defense, but it is Leslie Frazier's baby. But like how good he is with situations, like they're one of the most aggressive teams on fourth down.
Yep.
Like that's Nick Sirianni isn't calling plays in the offense for the Eagles.
That's a great example. Yep.
That's another guy it's a lot of confidence in yourself to not go like, well, I got to game the plans up. Or game plan this up and call the plays because I'm the head coach now. And this is my chance to just go, no, I'm not going to do that. There's so much stuff that goes into being a head coach. So you got to compliment the guys that can do it and do it well.
All right. It's time for Win My Fourth Screen. Let's do this.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
All right. I was looking for his name. I'm glad I finally found it here. It's at the bottom. Scott Anderson says, I'm here to tell you about a blood feud so pure it would make Bill Shakespeare think every bad play. Let me do that again.
I like that.
I'm here to tell you about a blood feud. Goodness gracious. I'm here to tell you about a blood feud so pure it would make William Shakespeare rethink every bad play he ever wrote. This feud is one man powered by hatred against an entire organization, no matter who is part of it. I'm sure by now you know that I'm talking about Bill Belichick versus the existence of the New York Jets. We all know how the story begins. Parcells resigned and plans to turn it over to Belichick. However, he has no faith in the Jets' new ownership, led by Johnson & Johnson and future Queen Elizabeth Bestie Woody Johnson, and he then resigns on a napkin and gets traded for a future first-round pick. Belichick then spends the rest of his career winning and winning and winning. The Jets occasionally pull something out of thin air, but usually it's stuff like 54-13, where they hurt the quarterback and throw bombs up the fourth. It's fine, whatever. Now, I want you to flash back to December 27th, 2015. A younger Robert Mays and Bill Barnwell of Grantland.com are getting ready to sit down for the Grantland NFL podcast. Nate Tice is pounding the table in the scouting room for Devondre Campbell. I'm at home in New York watching as Ryan Fitzpatrick's throwing lasers to Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker and handing it off to Chris Ivory. Touchback still went to the 20. AEW didn't exist. Roman Reigns was 3 days into his first title run. The country was captivated by number one song Hello by Adele. You get the point. That leads me to this. That was the last time the Jets beat the Patriots. The Ringer didn't exist. The Athletic didn't exist. Christian Hackenberg was an NFL prospect. What the fuck is happening? Anyway, I'm sure this game will be on national TV because I spent time writing this email and trying not to get oatmeal on my laptop. Thank you for reading this. May God have mercy on our souls because the Jets are 5-2. All the best, Scott Anderson, owner of a Vernon Golston jersey. Is that true? Have the Jets really not beat the Patriots?
So they're
in that long? That can't be right.
They're 0-12 in the last since 2015. Wow.
I almost hope that's not right because it would be amazing if he thought that's how long it had been since the Jets beat the Patriots.
The Roman Reigns 3 days in his first title run. That was like the last time I was watching WWE. So I took a break until AEW came around. So that really jogged my memory. That's hilarious, by the way, that he looked up the where I was at in 2015. I appreciate that. Is that what it is?
Right,
is it 12
so
games?
I'm looking at it right now. No, oh shit, yeah. Oh shit, yeah. The last time I'm pretty sure. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, the last time the Jets beat the Patriots is 2015.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's right. That's horrifying.
That's a run right there.
So thank you, Scott Anderson, owner of a Vernon Golston jersey.
One of the greatest combine testers of all time. Vernon Golston made his whole contract off of Wisconsin game in 2008. I think it was like he went off.
He had a pretty damn big game against Michigan. Also,
yeah. That's right. Yeah,
I was there. He had a big game against Michigan.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I know. Sorry. Yeah, that's my.
Sorry for botching your email about 50 different times, Scott. Apparently, I can't read. All right, we're gonna do our picks and then we're gonna get out of here.
Boo Jimmy's Lock of the Week.
Ooh, that's a big lock, all right.
All right, I went 3-2 last week. I'm still somehow 16-19 on the season, which great for me.
Back up there. You're creeping back up.
I not super excited about this week's slate of games.
Oh,
so I have the Cardinals -3.5 against the Cardinals. Excuse me, I have the Vikings -3.5 against the Cardinals. Don't feel overly good about that. We didn't get to talk about this.
Sound like you didn't really sugarcoat it.
We will talk about the Vikings at some point, maybe on our Sunday recap show. The Vikings offense is kind of frustrating to watch right now. They don't really have much pushing the ball down the field, all of that stuff. I still just think the Cardinals.
I share my Vikings stats.
Still don't think the Cardinals are very good. Yeah.
I've littered this podcast with stats, but
it's beautiful.
So in the first half, the Vikings are first in success rate, their offense, first in success rate and 7th in EPA per play, 8th in EPA per drive. In the second half, they're 20th in success rate, 28th in EPA per play. Like once they get outside that opening script, they just fall apart, which is just
so that gap. Also, the success rate and the EPA per play, they have no explosive plays.
Yeah,
they have zero explosive plays. Kirk Cousins not push the ball down the field at all. That being said, I'm taking the Vikings -3.5 against the Cardinals this week.
You're welcome.
I have the Falcons -4.5. They're at home. I think the Panthers are still pretty bad. Like I don't feel good about that, but I still think that the Panthers had that one good week. I don't feel great
PJ Walker magic. You don't think
that might be a 1 week thing. There's a chance I just go 0-5 this week. I have the Titans -1.5 against the Texans. I think that the Titans are better than the Texans, so 1.5 it feels just fine to me. I have the Niners -1.5 against the Rams. We watched that Niners defense last time these two teams played. I feel pretty good about that. And for all the reasons we talked about with the Packers defense, I think 10.5 is a lot of points. I'm taking the Packers plus 10.5 against the Bills.
I'm not. That's my first one. I'm lead off. I went 2-3 last week. I talked myself out of a lot of good ones, so that was cool. 19-16. So still above 500, so we're okay. But I am also going Packers plus 10.5. Anytime I get 10.5 points with Aaron Rodgers, I don't care how disappointing this Packers offense has been. I don't care how many guys are botching. I don't care if Aaron Rodgers isn't pushing the ball. I'm still betting on him. Plus 10.5, like you just said. It's a lot of points. I'm going Patriots -1.5 at the Jets. So that streak is going
13 straight.
Yeah, 13 straight apparently. So, but I just think I think Belichick against Brees Hall's out now. I do like Michael Carter. They traded for James Robinson. Elijah Vera Tucker is now gone. Tore his triceps, so that's a huge loss. I think the Patriots, once again, the passing downs is going to be able to have their way. I also think I'm going to go with the Titans -1.5, just like you, at the Texans. I'm going Dolphins -3.5 at the Lions. Some of that shine's fallen off on the Lions. I think this Dolphins team is a weird one a little bit, but I still think they can hum an offense. I think against the Lions defense that's struggling to stop a lot of teams, I think they're going to be cooking. Then this one, I have no idea. I don't know why. Just felt right. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just so mad at the Jags, but I'm going Broncos +3.5 at the Jaguars in London. Sure. Why not? But this is a bet on the Broncos defense. I'm taking the points, and whoever was the dog in this game, that's who I was taking. I just think this Jaguars team does a lot of things, but they just also aren't great. They're just more of an average team that's had some bad luck. I think the Broncos defense will keep them in this game, so I'm going to go +3.5.
Something of a home game for Shad Khan. Right?
Something of a home game, right? Jacksonville East. That's what they call London, right?
Jacksonville, very, very far northeast. Right, there you go. All right, guys, 4-1 for me last week, 23-12. What?
No big
up?
deal.
No
Fucking
big
killing
deal
it.
on the
Jesus.
season. Yeah, feeling good. Hopefully, I keep it rolling here. My favorite pick that I made this week, at least as of maybe 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
Or so, was Bengals -3.5. Yeah, Bengals -3.5. I was like, this was the no doubter of the week, and so I'm rethinking that. I'm scrapping that. I replaced that right now with Giants +2.5 at the Seahawks. I think even without Evan Neal, what they are able to do on the ground that you guys have broken down so well this season is going to be something that ultimately is too much for the Seahawks and at least keeps this game within a score. So I'll go ahead and take the points on the Giants. We do have one unanimous pick, guys, and it is a pick that we made unanimously against this team last week, and it was a loss for us. Give me the Titans also, -1.5 against the Texans. Everything that you guys just broke down, really, really interesting, and I think is part of the reason why they've been so good against teams that are clearly worse than them. Houston falls into that group of teams, and so I think they can keep that rolling this week. Our unanimous picks have been pretty good. I actually went back and looked at it today. Our unanimous picks have been pretty good so far this season. The caveat there is that most of them have been the Chiefs. So a little bit different.
If it works, it works.
But hey, our unanimous picks haven't been bad, so we'll go ahead and take the Titans. Love the 49ers. You said it when you guys were talking about this, Robert. I just think the Rams are going to have a whole lot of trouble being able to protect Matthew Stafford against this 49ers pass rush. 49ers -1.5. Nate, I'm going with you on the Broncos. I feel this like, I don't know, I'm getting more than a field goal. This team has looked sort of out of sorts the last few weeks. I'll go ahead and take 3.5 on the Broncos. And then, as great as we all felt about Justin Fields on Monday night, this is a comeback to earth game for the Bears. I'll take the Cowboys laying the 9.5. I think this could be a very similar game for the Cowboys to what we saw last week against the Lions, where the offense doesn't quite go gangbusters, but they don't let the Bears' offense do anything. They win this like 24-6, similar to what they did to the Lions. They go into their bye next week, and then they come out in week 10 with Dak really ready to get things going.
It's a sleeper hold game. When they
I couldn't
paper, it's 1, 2. That's what this game is. You just knock them out.
I couldn't bring myself to pick it. Either way, I couldn't bring myself to pick it. It's like I don't feel good about the +9.5, but I also don't want to root for the -9.5. Yeah. Sure. All right, guys, that's all we got today. If you have not, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this, there is a link in the description of this podcast. We obviously do the weekly preview show live on YouTube. We do our Sunday night show live on YouTube. We're doing a Thursday night recap of Bucks Ravens tonight on YouTube. So come back and check that out. Actually, it's a really good Thursday night game.
Yeah,
so
I know.
We were only doing that on YouTube, but it's the only place you can watch and hear that. Please subscribe to the podcast. If you have not, leave a rating, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate that. Subscribe to The Athletic, theathletic.com/football show. And we will be back here tonight for Bucks and Ravens. Until then, appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.